Hi everyone and welcome to my favourite books of 2024. I saw Destiny Said Well do this video recently and it kind of inspired me to do my own mini one because I did want to film this at the beginning of the year and I just never got to it, and I just feel like it's really helpful and I love watching these videos because it just gives you some like inspiration for books to read, and obviously all of these books are already out so you don't have to worry about not being able to read them. And yeah, I feel like we should just get into it. I have picked 10 books and then I have just a few honorable mentions as well that I won't talk as deeply into, but I do want to just like recommend these books and also maybe recommend them to people that like other books similar to that, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. So my number 10 is Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This is the second book in the Magnolia Parks series, and I'm sure you probably heard of this series if you're in the booktube or booktalk space. This is my favourite so far of the books. I've only read the first three, so two Magnolia Parks and one Daisy Hates, and I'm definitely a Daisy girl over a Magnolia girl, so that's why I'm recommending this one in particular. But I would recommend this whole series if you're someone that loves like Gossip Girl. It's kind of like drama with a bit of romance, I would say, in terms of a genre. It's very well written, but that can make it a bit hard to follow at times if you're not as emotionally invested. And I feel like a lot of people can get really emotionally invested in this series. I'm just not one of those people, but I do specifically enjoy the Daisy Hates books just because I feel I resonate more with her over Magnolia. So that would be my first recommendation slash my number 10 book. My next book is another one that you might have seen if you are a fan of like Sarah Crowley, Destiny, I think Hayley Pham. A lot of people love this author, and it's Annabelle Monaghan, and this in particular is Nora Goes Off Script. This is my only book that I've read by her, but I did really love it, and I feel like the hype is there for a reason with this author. If you haven't heard about this book, it's basically about Nora who writes a script about her life and like how it's kind of fallen apart. She's in the middle of a divorce and she's written this script and it's becoming a movie, and it's set at her house, and she kind of has a little thing with the main actor who is playing her husband. So that's kind of the premise of the story, but I would say it's more women's fiction than romance, and there was definitely parts of this book where I was like, I actually don't know if this is actually a romance, if like we're gonna get that happy ending that you normally get in a romance. But I still really loved it. I just feel like go in more knowing that it's a women's fiction than a romance and you'll enjoy it even more. So I think I rated this like 4.25 or 4.5 because I was kind of expecting a bit more romance, but it was still so good. And honestly, everyone says this, but if you like Emily Henry or maybe like Catherine Center's writing, you're gonna love Annabelle Monaghan. Her books are really short as well, which is obviously really good, and I feel like her books are quite summary as well, so I'd recommend it for the summer. So my next book I'm recommending is The Crimson Moth. I feel like this book has again been talked about a lot, specifically in autumn of 2024, and that is when I read it. It's just so good. Like, I know everyone's talked about it and you've probably heard enough about it, but it's so good. It's really like fast paced and very like captivating. It's not necessarily like a big fantasy world. It's quite like almost dystopian. I haven't actually said what this book's about. This book is about a witch called Rune who kind of hides herself in plain sight as a like high society person in, I don't know where it's based, but it's kind of giving like, you know, Victorian London vibes, I guess. She kind of hides herself in plain sight, but she's actually been saving witches from being hunted. And it also follows Gideon, who is a witch hunter, and he is also the brother of Rune's best friend. So that's kind of the vibe of the book. It's very like typical romancy, I will say, but if you love romancy, you're gonna love this book. The romance was good. It did feel a bit young adult at times, but there's definitely more adult topics talked about. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's young adult, and just the general vibe of the book was so good. So I'd highly recommend this if you're a big romancy person. It's also known as Heartless Hunter in America. My next book is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I don't know if this came out last year, but I read it last year. And this, honestly, I feel like Lauren Asher is just a great romance author. If you're someone that likes romance, she tends to have bigger books. She also wrote the Dreamland Billionaire series. Then you're going to like Lauren Asher's books because they're just pure romance. I feel like they're never bad as well. Like, there's always something that I like about the romances that I've read by her. This one in particular is about a house flipper, I'm pretty sure, but she has like a TV show, and then the guy, the love interest, is a house flipper as well. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe the woman is a decorator or something, but the guy basically flips houses and has made millions from it. And she goes back to her hometown and they fall in love. That's basically it. But in particular, I really like this one because I am very interested in house flipping, interior design. I did a degree in real estate, so it's just very up my street, and I really like that about this book. It was just really cute. Like, that's all I can say, but highly recommend her books if you like romance. The next book I'm going to talk about, which I feel has been talked about way too much, even though I really love this book, but I don't want to go too far into it because I think people might have had enough of hearing about it, but it's worth reading for sure, is Beartown by Frederick Backman. I read this in like I think February last year, so I was a bit ahead of the recent hype, but I feel like I read this at a perfect time, and that is because this book is about an event that happens in the town and how the town kind of divides and reacts. And it's just a town that kind of revolves around hockey. It's pretty much all they've got going for them is their hockey team. And that's like in the literal sense, like they don't have much business or anything. Their only business is in the hockey team. And then something happens and you just follow everyone involved and just everyone in the town and how they are going to deal with it. Definitely check trigger warnings for this one. So yeah, the reason I say I read this at a good time is because I read this as a scandal was like being more revealed in the hockey, I think it's America, hockey community, I guess. There was a scandal in hockey that kind of relates to what also happened in this book. So I just feel like at the time it was like already on my mind, and then I read this and it just, yeah, really got to me. So I really love this one. If you're from a town that kind of does revolve around sports, or just in like communities that revolve around sports, I feel like you'll like this, especially as a woman in that scenario. Personally, as I said, I do like sports, but I'm from a rugby family and I grew up around rugby coaches, rugby players, and I can't directly relate to this one, but I can like the comments and stuff that are made being in that space as a woman. I know how that feels, so I could somewhat relate to that. So yeah, I really recommend Beartown. The next book I'm recommending is like, I don't really know how I feel about it now, but I did love it when I read it. And it's Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is part of the Knock 'Em Out series. I feel like this was talked about a lot 2 years ago, and that is when I read the first two books. And I did really love them at the time, but it was kind of as I was starting to get back into reading. And I would recommend these books if you're like starting to get into reading and you want to read a romance series that is very like well connected. There's like a good found family. I feel like the setting is described very well. There's just a lot about it that's really good. I just feel like if I read this now, I might not have loved it as much. This one I did really like that's why it's on the list. I really like this. It was like friends to enemies to lovers, which is a trope that I really like. But the other books, especially the first one, I'm not sure I would have loved as much if I read it now. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I feel like if you want to read the series, go into it knowing that you might not like the first one, but I would say the second and the third one are a lot better. But yeah, that's what I'm going to say. I feel like if you like romance, but you're someone that's getting into romance, I would recommend it. But if you're someone that has read a lot of romance, maybe don't read it. The next book is Reckless by Elsie Silver. This was in, I think, one of my videos, like at the start of my channel, or maybe just a wrap up. I love this book. It was a 4.75 stars, and I honestly don't even remember why it wasn't a 5 stars now, because I just loved this book. It was probably my favorite in the check 'em out. Check 'em out? No. Chestnut Springs series. I did also really love Flawless as well. This one I just really related to Winter. She's kind of someone that doesn't let people in as easily, and she's very like true to herself, I guess is the right way to put it. I don't really know how to describe it, but I just really related to her and her reactions to things. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was about Winter and Theo. Theo is a bull rider and Winter is a nurse, and she has an unexpected pregnancy. That's like on the back, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, okay, it is on the back. She has an unexpected pregnancy, and that's what it follows. And if you're someone that doesn't like that trope, I would still recommend this book because it's just so good. But this whole series is good, and I know that probably everyone has heard about it. So again, don't need to ramble on. If you like romance and you like small town romance and country and yeah, all of those things, you will like the series. And I feel like this book is pretty well loved out of all of them, so you will probably like this one. So my third book is actually also Reckless, but by Lauren Roberts. This I feel like did get some like more negative opinions when it first came out, but I think a lot of people can agree, like, it wasn't necessarily what we were expecting, but I wouldn't say that it was a bad book, and I still really enjoyed it. So I gave this like 4.5 stars, I think, something along those lines, just because not a lot happened in this one, but it did build up to the romance between Kai and Payden, and they're like my favourite couple. Powerless, which is the first book, is like one of my favourite books ever. You've probably heard about it as well, so I don't need to continue talking about it, but it's kind of like similar vibes to The Crimson Moth, where it's like it is a fantasy but it's somewhat realistic. Like it's kind of got Hunger Game vibes, the first book anyway, not this one. So it's kind of fun because you can kind of imagine yourself in it a little bit more, because it's like the real world but with one thing different. This one definitely does have like special powers, I guess you would say, but yeah, I just really like this series and this book. And yeah, if you have read Crimson Moth and you haven't read the Powerless series, I would recommend, and vice versa. So my second book is A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. I talked about this pretty recently in one of my videos, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but it's the third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which is a series about Evangeline, who basically she makes a deal with like a god, and you just follow her journey with that, I guess. I don't want to spoil it too much. I would say this is kind of young adult or new adult. I think you would call it closed door romance, from what I remember. In saying that, I just felt so connected to Evangeline and Jax, and I just love Jax, and everyone talks about Jax, and like Jax is just, I love him. So like if you hear people talking about how much I love Jax, it's from this series. And yeah, I would just honestly really recommend it. It's like a magical whimsy vibe as well, which I really liked. And yeah, that is my second book. Okay, sorry, my grandparents came over, so I had to quickly go and have a tea with them. But I believe we're on my first book and my favourite book from 2024, which I have chosen as Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This feels like a bit of a cheat just because I read this whole series last year and I loved it, and I don't feel like I should put more than one of these books on my list, but I did particularly love this one. This one was my favourite, and I also really love The Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the third one, and the last one that's out so far, which is Court of Silver Flames. Those three were my favourite, and it's really hard to like pick one that I really like. So if you haven't read the Akatar series yet, which is very unlikely, but if you haven't, it basically follows Feyre to begin with, who is from a family that did have a lot of wealth and they lost it, and now she lives in like a little cottage on the outskirts of her village, I'm pretty sure she lives in, and she lives with her dad, who is, I pretty sure he's like disabled at this point because he was beaten basically, so his legs don't really work anymore. And then she also lives with her two older sisters, Elaine and Nesta, and you basically just follow her at the beginning of the book trying to hunt for food for her family, and you kind of get the notion that she does a lot of the work for the family, kind of has the vibe that her sisters aren't really bothered with trying, at least from Feyre's point of view. And that's kind of what I like about the series, because the last book is from Nesta's point of view and you kind of do see the other side of that. And I know some people don't particularly like that book because they don't like Nesta. I'm just someone that does like Nesta and I can relate to her, so that's something to just be aware of. The last book is from Nesta's point of view, the oldest sister, and she is quite like, I'm gonna say cold, but like there is a reason behind that. And yeah, I just personally related to her and how she kind of puts shields up and stuff like that. Some people just don't like her and think that she's a terrible person, and you might be one of those people, but hopefully you'll give that book a chance to see her perspective. That's what the first book kind of starts out with, and then it kind of follows a Beauty and the Beast retelling kind of vibe in the first one. Then this is the second one, and this one's just like more magical, I guess is what I would say, and the romance is so good in this. This is my favourite book for the romance. I'm obviously, as you can tell, a romance girly, but I do like fantasy just for fantasy, but I prefer romantic fantasy, and that's why this is overall my favorite of the series. I feel like that's all I'm going to say on this series. If you haven't read it, you should read it. I feel like everyone should give this a chance, and I know some people that are like big on fantasy don't particularly like this series, so definitely take that into account, but I think you should try and give it a chance. A lot of my friends recently have started this series. Literally all of them are not really readers or more romance readers, and every single one has liked it. I think it can be a bit of a different series though if you're very used to pure romance. If my friend is watching, she knows who she is because she couldn't finish the series. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Akatar. I think you should give it a chance if you haven't yet. Just be aware that some people that are really into fantasy don't love this series. So those are my top 10 books of 2024. I have a couple of honorable mentions. These were books that just didn't quite reach like the love level that a lot of these books had for me. And the first one I want to talk about is Funny Story. This is by Emily Henry, who I did mention when I was talking about Nora Goes Off Script. I feel like Emily Henry is a pretty well-known author at this point. She writes romance but in a more literary fiction, women's fiction way. I would say you're gonna like Emily Henry. If you like romance, there's just no way you're not gonna like Emily Henry, but you will like her books if you just like kind of summary fiction in general. A lot of her books kind of have that summer vibe. So if you like Ellen Hildebrand maybe, or that kind of writing where it's like just a summer book and it's kind of fiction, there might be a little bit of romance, I would recommend Emily Henry. I feel like I think she's my favourite author, to be honest. Like her books, every single one I've really enjoyed. I also read Happy Place last year and I did really like that one, but I actually think it might be my least favourite, which is extremely unpopular in the Emily Henry lover universe, I guess. I still really liked it. Like I rated it, I think 4 star or 4.25 stars. The romance just wasn't hitting for me personally. Whereas Funny Story, which I read I think like a month after Happy Place, I really like the romance and I really like that book. I probably would have rated it like almost a 5 star, but there was a specific point in the book that really put me off the male main character. Overall, I love the vibe of the book. He works in like a winery, I'm pretty sure, and she is like working in a library. So it's very bookish vibes. All her books are very bookish. Recommend Emily Henry in general. My favourite book by her is Book Lovers because I relate to Nora. And if you've read all of these books, you're probably understanding what I'm like just by the characters that I can relate to. I've literally said Nora, Nesta, and Winter. So I feel like you can kind of see my personality a bit. Nora, I just really relate to, like probably more than any of the other characters as a whole, and I know Destiny Sidwell feels that way too, which I think is quite interesting because we're also both Aquariuses and we're like born in the same year. I think she's like 10 days younger than me, so that's really interesting that me and Destiny both relate to Nora. If you're an Aquarius born in 2003, let me know if you also relate to Nora, because I just think that's really interesting. I'm quite into astrology. My other honourable mention is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This book I rated a 4 star, and that was because it didn't give me like a 5 star feeling and I didn't like love it, but I really enjoyed this book. And if you've read it, you might get what I'm about to say, but it's very mundane. Like literally nothing happens in this book. It's her year of rest and relaxation. She's literally just trying to sleep the whole year. She doesn't want to do anything, she just wants to sleep. Barely anything happens in this book, but I just loved it. I don't know why. I feel like it's obviously not relatable in the aspect that she wants to sleep for the whole year, although I would love to sleep for the whole year, but it's relatable in the way that when she's awake, she's doing very like normal mundane tasks, like she's going getting coffee and I don't know what else she was doing, but like very mundane things. And I also really feel like the writing was so clever in this book because obviously it's mundane, nothing's happening, she's just sleeping. You obviously don't read her sleeping like you do read her being awake, but she's asleep for a lot of it. She's also just kind of in that state of not quite awakeness, if you know what I mean. And obviously she doesn't do this by like traditional ways. You can't really do it by a traditional way. So if you're triggered by drug use, self-harm even, I would say, then don't read this. There's a few other trigger warnings that I would check. As I was saying, the writing is just so clever because it's so mundane, but this main character, she's depressed. Like she wants to sleep for the whole year. She doesn't want to interact with people. She feels like her romantic life is just not good. Another thing I would say is the chapters are extremely long in this, but for some reason I just wanted to keep reading on. So I read this in 2 days because I just wanted to read each chapter. Like I'd get to the end of like a 60-page chapter and I'd be like, I need to read the next one, and then I would have read another like 50 pages and then I was halfway through the book. I would definitely recommend this if you like literary fiction. I would recommend it if you maybe want to step into literary fiction. I wouldn't recommend it as like your first ever book. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to people that are like triggered by depression, I guess is the best way of putting it. I would say just if you know that you're not in the right headspace for a book where it's very mundane and she just doesn't really care about life. Really, I would not recommend this one. So those are my top 10 books from last year, and then 2 honorable mentions, so technically 12 but not really. I read 76 books I think last year, so picking 10 was a bit difficult, but I feel like it did make sense in terms of ones that I'd really recommend. I feel like this video might help some people with choosing some new books. And I also feel like a lot of these books you guys will have already read and loved, so I'd love to talk to you about them. And yeah, those are my top 10 books of 2024.